Hey, I just wanted to make a video on the happenings of what's going on this year. Been a hell of a year, hasn't it been? 2020 been absolutely ridiculous. And I wanted to make a quick video. I'm not one for really typing things out. I'm better at talking. And so I've got a little note, a few notes here that I want to refer to as I'm talking. And excuse me if I make some mistakes as I'm shooting from the hip. So 2020 again has been a hell of a year. Absolutely ridiculous in many, many ways. One thing that impacted me right off the hop was losing Kobe Bryant. Unreal that we lost such a hero, an amazing athlete at the start of the year in such a horrific helicopter accident, which also took his daughter, Gigi. Really impacted me and certainly was not the way to kick off the year. Then, of course, Corona jumped in and really took the world completely over, um, from country to country, at home, abroad, everywhere. This is one thing that we've all been unified on, and that is something that is one of the very small positives about it, is that it would bring us together. It didn't matter creed, color, of course, age. The older you got, the more susceptible you were. So it would actually make us more empathetic to those who are aged and possibly have some sort of physical complications, which would make them more susceptible to corona. So the small silver lining of that would have been the bringing together of everyone, being that all of us were vulnerable to this disease. Then, of course, recently, George Floyd, this horrific incident that occurred. It is nothing short of a nightmare, uh, where a police officer sat on the neck of a man for 8 minutes and 46 seconds, taking his life. Absolutely horrible. There's no defense for it. And it hurt. I think it's grade 8 or 9. Played a lot of basketball, as you can see behind me. I've got a bunch of memorabilia for basketball. It's a sport that I've loved all my life, and I've been fortunate enough to make many a friend in playing that sport. And one thing that I say is I could go anywhere in the world, go on a basketball court, and make a number of friends and possibly a few enemies within a very, very short period of time. But when I was in grade 8 or 9, I remember walking with a couple of black friends and I, from one court. We finished up some games. We were walking to another court, and we were going to be walking past my house. And we were all hungry. So I said, hey, why don't we stop by my parents' place? Why don't we stop by my house? And we can go have a bite to eat. And my friends looked at me and said, are you sure that's okay? I said, well, what do you mean? And they said, well, are you sure your parents are okay with us coming over for lunch? And I still was daft to it. I didn't understand what the hell they meant. And they said, well, we're black and you're white. Is that okay if we come over? And it was a ridiculous notion from how I was raised that that would be at all a problem. But to realize that that is something that they had and they had to think about really stuck with me forever and to this day. So it made me sensitive to that situation, and it's something that hurt me personally, and it made me sad that that is something that my friends had to think about. And of course, this George Floyd scenario just brings this right up, brings it right up to the top. And now I see many of my friends on social media and calling out for assistance, calling out for people to be now active in saying, listen, uh, we have been experiencing this type of thing for a long period of time, and we need people to look. We need for Black lives to matter. And that situation, that term has been vilified to a certain extent, and I've been looking to understand what that means. Now, there's people that I know that are on social media that I've been friends with for years and years, great people, upstanding, excellent friends over decades. And this is the first time that they've really reached out and said, listen, these are experiences that we've been through. that's been very difficult for us and been very specific in regards to what these instances are. And we need our friends, particularly white friends, to seek understanding, to look into this further. We need you to be working with us. And so when my friends go on social media, it doesn't matter. If someone's going to reach out and provide a heartfelt request for assistance, then certainly I'm going to look into that and see what I can do. Now, from my understanding, from what I've seen, is they've been looking for understanding, for people to listen, to look into what's been going on further than what we understand right now. And again, I've been empathetic based on my history, but I needed to look into it further. Now, being kind of selfish and not with a lot of time, and like I said, loving basketball, I thought, how can I look into a situation which I need to gain more understanding of? And one of the players in the NBA that had been forever misunderstood and misjudged, possibly, and I want to look further into it, was Allen Iverson. Someone who is, you don't have to look too far, has been vilified in the media for a long period of time based on how he carries himself, who he is, and how he had somewhat of a thug persona. So I wanted to look into what that was about and see if there was something deeper to it, gain a further understanding of what was going on. And what I found was shocking. So what I did is I downloaded a documentary called Iverson. You can find it on here. Yes, you have to pay for it, but it's well worth the watch. And there were some things that were public information, but certainly was not provided over the years to make it understood of how he came to be the way that he was. And so I was absolutely shocked when I watched and I saw that when he was a young man, when he was 17, grade 11, he had just done everything right. Listen, he was raised in a really difficult environment, had a coach take him in to bring him into a better situation. And he wasn't the best at students. Guess what? Neither was I. Shocking. But he excelled in sports. He had won a state championship in football as well as basketball. And one sad night in 1993, when he was in grade 11, him and his friends went to a bowling alley in which apparently some white people there had uttered the racial slur, the granddaddy of them, the N-bomb, and a fight ensued. Out of 40-some people, Allen Iverson and his three friends were the ones who were charged with I can't remember exactly what the charges were, but they were provided a number of different charges, and Allen himself was convicted to 15 years in prison. 40-something people, and he was isolated, him and his friends, to serve this time. No one else. So it was 15 years reduced to 5. This young man who had already surpassed expectations, who had gone through so many different things, and then who had elevated himself in status to bring to his state a football championship as well as a basketball championship. Now they're going to put him in jail for 5 years. You know, I watched that and I just thought about myself at that age. And I saw that video and saw him and his friends sitting down before they'd been convicted and they were to be sentenced. And it showed them sitting there together, staying over, Alan sitting on a bed, and them just talking to each other about what's happening. And he was just like I was. He was just like I was when I was that age. And me and my friends sitting together talking about things, except they had to sit there and discuss what was going to occur the next day after being to be possibly sentenced. And it just broke my heart that this is something that they had to deal with Was I a good student? No. Was I an athlete? Yes. Did I get into trouble? Yeah, a little bit. But was I ever going to be succumb to such a horrible thing like that? So he went to prison and he was there for 5 years was the expectations. And there's a quote in there where Alan's talking and he said that every day, every day he had lawyers coming to him saying it was going to be the next day, the next day, the next day he was going to get out. Until he said a friend came in and gave him great advice and said, and I quote, "You're not getting out of here, so stop thinking about it and do what you've got to do. Handle what you've got to handle and get back to what you love to do." It made it so much easier for me to do the time because I had in my mind that I wasn't going nowhere, unquote. So this young man, after being convicted of something that was unjust, that they didn't provide bond to, and there was a comment that's saying the only people who weren't provided bond were those of capital murderers. He had accepted the fact that he was going to be there for 5 years. So in his mind, he believed that this is where he was going to be. He'd already accepted that. And then, because of a number of people within the community, and then Tom Brokaw of NBC News came out and did a piece on him, the whole nation, it took a nation to clear this guy, to get him out. And then, so the governor, who was, I believe, the first black governor, provided clemency to him initially after 4 months. So he spent 4 months in jail, and then he was released at that point in time. They didn't even provide clemency for his friends at that point. It took a little bit longer to let them out. This is all unjust and ridiculous. I could not believe that I was watching this. And so then we have Allen Iverson go into the NBA. And again, this is a man who accepted the fact that these people made those judgments upon him and just powered through. He goes to the NBA. He then becomes NBA's bad boy, per se, in a number of ways. Inked up, wears the bandanas, says things that he's not necessarily supposed to say, appears to be selfish, but works absolutely incredibly hard, outworks anybody. This is a 6-foot man working in a land of giants. All along the way, questioned, why are you acting this way? Why are you that way? This is a man who was jailed when he was 17 years old, unjustly, and sat in a jail cell for 4 months. And hey, look at what we did. We convinced him. He accepted it. He accepted it. So how is that going to change his mind? How is that going to affect his future? How would you feel if you were in jail for 4 months at the age of 17? Would that affect you for the rest of your life? Would that change your behavior? Would that maybe make you a little bit more obstinate or defiant, possibly for the rest of your life? I think it would. So if we look at it through an empathetic lens and say, what is going on? Well, it makes so much sense that he would be the way that he was. And I followed his career. Throughout his whole career, he was chastised about who he was and what he was about and why he did this. Why don't we look to see what happened when he was 17 years old? When you take that into account, would that not be something you carried for the rest of your life? It would. Now, when we look at the situation of what's occurred with George Floyd, what has happened to Black people for a very long period of time? Same thing. They've been judged unjustly for a very long period of time. And then when something like George Floyd occurs and people come out and say, listen, this is something that we feel. This is something that I've been experiencing. We need to look back and see why and make an understanding. Don't create knee-jerk reactions in defending ourselves and say, oh, no, we're not like that. We don't judge you this way. We need to look look at it through an empathetic lens and try to understand. Now, in this instance, again, I looked back to something that interests me, basketball, and found a figure that I enjoyed and uh, really appreciated throughout a period of time. And so, in a selfish way, and almost in an entertaining way, I was able to go back and look through something of interest. And I didn't have to turn over too many rocks to get some understanding of what's going on. Now, I looked through that documentary, Iverson, and then I also looked into another documentary called No Crossover, the trial of Allen Iverson, which digs deeper into the trial. This is just me saying, this is me looking into how I can have a better understanding of what's going on out there. It's an ongoing thing. I think that I do have a higher understanding of what's happening because of this thing that I've done in looking into Allen Iverson, and I will be looking into other things. Other books that I've read in the past is Malcolm X. His autobiography is unbelievable, as well as Kareem Abdul-Jabbar's book, Giant Steps. But what I've come to this revelation with Allen Iverson, because this happened in 93, this is not a long time ago. And I am 46 years old. I'm middle-aged. We are the people who should be taking responsibility of our world right now. Let's not be absentee landlords. Let's make sure that when my son is out with his friends playing basketball, he doesn't have to have his black friends ask him the same question that was asked of me. If it's okay to come to his house for lunch. So this is an ongoing saga. There's no end to this. It's just an example of what I've done to hopefully gain some additional understanding. Like I say, this isn't refined. This is just something that I've done. And hopefully you can see that maybe you can go out, whoever it may be, look into something that's of interest to you. Look back to see of possibly some situations that you can dig into of some persecution of the past. And you'll probably find a lot more than it was originally communicated, and might assist you in gaining further understanding and getting a further understanding of why Black Lives Matter. And so that's changed that meaning of what that is to me. Thank you. God bless. Everyone stay healthy. Talk soon.